Hi everyone, welcome back to Aspergers from the Inside. You're here with Paul. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So the last couple of videos have been on masking, and today I wanted to look at the message that we tell ourselves when we mask. And in my opinion, this is potentially one of the most damaging aspects of masking in general, because there's only so much damage that the outside world can do to us compared to the messages that come from within. I've always got some level of resistance to someone else telling me something that I don't really believe. But if I believe certain things about myself, and if I constantly tell myself things like I'm inadequate, I'm defective, I am not worthy of acceptance or belonging, or any of these really hurtful things that I'm telling to myself, it's much harder to not listen to a voice that's already in my head. So with that in mind, we sometimes call masking camouflaging, and I think that's a really great name for it, because it shows the difference between simply having a social persona, right? Every human being has a social version of themselves that they bring to a situation, right? A socially constructed self is a phrase that some people use. So there's a big difference between having a socially constructed self that is authentic and masking. And the biggest difference, as far as that I can explain, is that when I am masking, I'm not being genuine to myself. I'm putting up some fake version of my true self. I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not. I'm putting up a facade that gives an impression, but it's only a really thinly veiled impression. And an analogy of this, might be having a like in the really old Hollywood studios where you can see the outline of the building, and behind it, it's just held up by a piece of wood, right? There is no real building behind it. There is nothing behind the mask that I would like people to know. It's just a mask itself. And what I would actually like is I would like people to not look very closely, because if they start looking too closely, they're going to realize that there's nothing behind the mask. It was only a thin facade of a socially appropriate something, and when they look through it, I'm going to start feeling really uncomfortable, because they're going to start knowing the truth. Do any of you feel like it's quite uncomfortable when people look you in the eye? Right? One of the reasons for that, in my experience at least, is because I feel like they can see into my soul, kind of. I feel like whatever I'm projecting at the moment, they're going to see behind it. They're going to see something that they didn't expect. They're going to find out that all of the really mean things that my head has been telling myself, like, I'm weird or broken or defective or not worthy of acceptance, or all of these things, I'm scared that someone else is going to see them. And when I start believing that, what I'm doing is I'm distancing my real self from everyone around me. And that means that I'm feeling this rejection. I'm making sure that this rejection happens regardless of what happens on the outside. So from the outside, I'm accepted, I'm included, I'm participating, I'm social, I have friends, people are talking to me, everything looks fantastic. All of my friends, all of my family, everyone around me thinks that I'm doing really well, and thinks that I'm accepted, and thinks that they're treating me really well. Whereas actually, the person that they're treating really well is only this thin veil of a mask that I've projected in that situation, which means that even that I'm feeling this rejection because they're accepting the mask. They're not accepting me, they're accepting the mask. If they could only see me, my mean brain is telling myself, if they could only see the real me, I would be instantly rejected. Which means that the more success I have in the world, the more I'm accepted in the world, the better coping strategies I have to be social in the world, the more internal rejection I feel. And it also means that no one can help me because no one else sees the rejection that I feel. All they see is the mask and the persona doing really well. So in a sense, that's only the beginning of the problem. The real problem begins when I think that when I start to forget who I am and I think that the mask is all there is, because then I've really internalized these messages of this shadow of an authentic self must be so horrible that I'm going to forget about that person completely. I'm going to ignore my true self completely because they must be so detestable that to try and bring them to the surface would not be conceivable. And that's the message that especially long-term masking tends to create. And I've forgotten my true self so much that all I can see is the mask. And I'm thinking, this is who I would like to be. Is it? Kind of. And it means that whenever parts of my true self emerge, that becomes a problem. Whenever burnout happens, whenever overwhelm happens, whenever I actually don't know what to do in a situation, whenever someone tries to get close to me, they want to get to know me, and I say, no thank you, you can't get to know me, you can only get to know the mask. And I would prefer that you didn't get to know the mask too well either, otherwise you're going to figure out that it's a mask, and then catastrophe. So these are all really, really big messages. And masking can sound on the surface to be a healthy coping mechanism of I'm going to blend into this situation, I'm going to find a socially constructed self. Only if it is not an authentic version of yourself, then it tends to come along with all of these negative messages. So this video is not anything to do with how to drop the mask. I've already made a video on 3 steps towards actually dropping the mask, but I thought I would make this video just to emphasize and share and acknowledge how significant and serious and all-pervading in my internal space having a mask can be. Because it goes to the absolute core of who I am, and it eventually, especially if a mask is kept up for decades, it gives me the powerful message that I don't like who I am. And it's very hard to be happy. It's very hard to engage with the world. It's very hard to do most things in life if we don't bring our authentic selves into that space. So I realize that's a fairly heavy topic. Hopefully you could relate. Actually, hopefully you couldn't relate, but hopefully this has given you some insight into someone else who might be masking heavily and might have some really not nice thoughts going on in their head about fearing for the acceptance of their true selves. So as I mentioned in my video on how to take off the mask, sometimes it's a lot easier for others to accept us before we accept ourselves. So if you can see that someone is really struggling to take off the mask, there is a lot that you can do in terms of unconditional acceptance to help create a situation where a person is going to hear the message it's okay for me to be myself here. I am not only accepted because I'm fitting in. I'm not only accepted because of this fantastic mask that I've learned to wear. Even if I did not have this mask, I would still be accepted. And that's a radically counterintuitive message for the brain that has been masking for decades to hear, but it's a very healing message as well. So I might leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you again another time. Bye.